Johnny Carson looked relaxed behind that Tonight Show desk, but 8 guests proved that even the king of late night could lose his cool. At his peak, Carson drew more nightly viewers than the NFL's Monday Night Football, an audience that expected effortless charm, crisp jokes, and interviews that felt like witty living room chats. Most nights he delivered, yet certain celebrities managed to trigger silent fury, bruised pride, or outright dread. Their visits sparked lifelong bans, off-camera shouting matches, slam doors, walk-offs, and the rare moment when Johnny Carson, the man who could defuse any bomb with a grin, felt trapped on his own show. Frank Sinatra was one of them. He traveled with bodyguards, a tailor, and sometimes detectives. NBC security logged his arrivals in block letters. One night in 1976, Carson was midway through a peanut allergy joke when Sinatra strolled out unannounced, wrapped an arm around him, and soaked in a 40-second standing ovation. Johnny smiled and asked, "Do you need the whole show, Frank?" Sinatra just winked and said, "Only till the band packs up." But behind the charm, Sinatra's team had demanded a cooler room temperature, a teleprompter to help him remember lyrics, and space for a dozen friends at the side of the stage. Carson, who usually ran a tight ship, reluctantly agreed. When a junior producer mispronounced a bodyguard's name, the guard allegedly had him removed from the hallway. Carson later muttered to friends, "It's Frank's world. We just film in it." On camera, he steered the conversation towards safe nostalgia, avoiding mob rumors, political feuds, and marriage scandals. Ratings soared, but backstage, assistants noticed him pouring an extra scotch. "Chairman of the board, sure," he sighed once, "but I still sign the network paychecks." Then there was Bob Hope, TV royalty. NBC executives called him sponsor gold, but his appearances arrived with luggage full of index cards. Days before taping, his staff sent The Tonight Show a thick packet, scripted jokes, suggested questions, product mentions, even camera angles. For Carson, whose magic came from improvising, it was like being handed sheet music in a jazz club. During taping, Hope rarely looked at him, eyes fixed on the cue cards by the camera lens, waiting for the next setup. Carson tried to ad-lib once, tossing in an unexpected follow-up. Hope blinked, shuffled his cards, and delivered the pre-written gag anyway, ignoring Johnny's lead. The laughter was polite, but the host's knuckles whitened around his pencil. Worse, every appearance seemed to be a plug for another NBC special. In one 1978 visit, Hope mentioned Texaco 3 times in 7 minutes. Johnny quipped, "Texaco gets more airtime than I do," but the joke only hinted at his frustration. Backstage, he grumbled, "I'm the warm-up act for a subsidy." Still, Hope's specials made millions in ad revenue, and NBC wouldn't risk upsetting that. Carson eventually adopted a defensive tactic. If Hope appeared, he'd be paired with a high-energy second guest or a big musical finale to restore some spontaneity. Staff noticed the temperature in Carson's dressing room seemed to drop 10 degrees the moment Bob Hope walked into the building. Joan Rivers was different, at first. Her first appearance in 1965 charmed Carson immediately, and over the next 2 decades she became his most frequent guest and his hand-picked permanent guest host, a role he'd given to no one else. She sent him handwritten thank yous, even birthday cakes with "Boss" spelled in frosting. But in 1986, after hosting nearly 200 nights, Rivers was offered her own late-night show by the brand-new Fox network. Complete creative control and a staggering contract. She accepted without calling Carson first, trusting a news embargo that broke anyway. Carson found out from the NBC News feed at 6 p.m. To him, mentorship came with loyalty, and that meant a personal phone call, not headlines. When Rivers finally dialed his number that evening, he told technicians, "I don't want to talk to her," and hung up. The next morning, the Tonight Show booking sheet carried a handwritten note, "Joan Rivers, permanently blacklisted." Her show collapsed within a year. She later wept in interviews, still haunted by the call that never happened. Carson never relented. Even after her husband's suicide and her career struggles, he maintained the ban, a grudge so deep that Jay Leno honored it for his entire 22-year run. When Jimmy Fallon finally invited her back in 2014, it felt like an old ghost had been exorcised. But for Carson, the wound never healed. Wayne Newton's clash with Carson was sharper and far more personal. Johnny had teased him in monologues for months, once joking that Las Vegas is installing brighter stage lights. Wayne Newton's hair needed photosynthesis. The audience roared, but Newton didn't. In 1980, after investing millions to buy the Aladdin Hotel, he stormed into Burbank unannounced. Security cameras caught him striding down the hallway, silk shirt open, fists clenched. He barged into Carson's office, slammed the door, and leaned over the desk. "You ever call me a joke again?" he said quietly. "I'll show you the punchline." Carson, unaccustomed to physical threats, just nodded. Newton walked out. For a full minute, Johnny didn't move, then finally exhaled. "Well, damn." That night, all Newton jokes vanished from the script. From then on, Carson's monologue targeted safer subjects: politicians, airlines, the weather. Newton only returned under contract stipulations: no jokes before or after, and no mention of their confrontation. One hallway showdown had permanently silenced late night's sharpest tongue, and then came Fred Rogers, a guest no one expected would unsettle Carson. The booking memo promised a wholesome segment: a short chat, a puppet demonstration, the perfect break from celebrity plugs. But the moment Rogers stepped through the curtain, the energy shifted. He paused center stage, gave a small wave, and said slowly, "Thank you very much, friends. I'm very glad to be here." The applause machine kept running because even the crew couldn't tell if he was done. Carson tried to match the mood, lifting his shiny loafer to reveal a pair of bright sneakers and telling him, "I wore my sneakers in your honor." Rogers folded his hands, smiled, and said softly, "That's very thoughtful, Johnny." The warmth was genuine, but the pace was glacial. Carson, a master of quick exchanges, suddenly found himself navigating an entirely different rhythm and not quite sure how to get back. The line landed in Fred Rogers' signature gentle tone, and the audience chuckled politely, waiting for Johnny's punchline. It never came. Rogers had finished his thought, and what should have been a quick laugh dissolved into silence. Dead air. The control room panicked, widening the shot to capture both men while Carson scrambled to reset the rhythm. Johnny tried again. Maybe a bit of playful chaos would help. "Ever get any kids' letters that went hilariously wrong?" Rogers smiled and shook his head. No wild stories here. Instead, he told of a 7-year-old boy who feared bathtub drains and how imagination could turn fear into curiosity. Each word was measured, deliberate, with a 2-second pause between every sentence. Perfect pacing for Mr. Rogers' neighborhood at 9 a.m., but an eternity at 11:45 p.m. From the booth, Associate Director Bobby Quinn tapped a stopwatch. Each pause was pushing the rundown deeper into overtime. Joke cards were getting crossed off. And Carson knew the rule. You didn't roast Mr. Rogers. Making him the butt of a joke would make Johnny look cruel. So he nodded politely through a 5-minute reflection on the power of make-believe, even as sweat began forming under his collar. The Neielson Breakdown the next day was blunt, a 3-point audience dip during Rogers' answers. The laughter count, yes, the staff actually clicked these, came in at 22 laughs total. The night before, a novelty animal segment had hit 60, but then the mail arrived. Hundreds of letters from parents, some who hadn't watched late night in years, all praising Rogers' warmth. "We gained goodwill," producer Fred de Cordova admitted, "just not momentum." Adjustments were made. Future Rogers appearances got slotted into December broadcasts when viewers tolerated a little more sentimentality. Writers shaved 2 monologue jokes to give Rogers a cushion, and talent coordinators made sure he brought a prop, the trolley, a puppet, so Johnny could interact without killing the pace. Carson stayed warm and courteous off camera, but as Rogers left one night, Johnny leaned toward a stage manager and whispered, "Book him after a stand-up, not before. Daddy needs caffeine after that." Years later, when asked about the slowest guest he'd ever had, Carson just smiled. "Fred Rogers, wonderful man, but it's the only interview where I kept checking the clock and my pulse." Charlton Heston was a different kind of challenge. He approached talk show questions like Senate testimony. Ask him if he'd ever been hurt filming a chariot scene, and you wouldn't get an anecdote. You'd get childhood horse ranch stories, Yale drama school memories, and a philosophy lecture on the nature of risk in art. 5 minutes later, then he'd tell you about the cracked rib. During one 1987 episode, producers counted 9 laughs, down from the usual 30. Carson's solution? Pair Heston with Don Rickles to revive the room. Rickles walked in after one such marathon, looked around, and deadpanned. Who died? Oh, the audience. The place erupted. Backstage, Johnny grinned and told him, "Always follow Moses with mayhem." From then on, Heston was welcome, but strictly 8 minutes, one epic story max, no politics. And then, Don Rickles himself. He thrived on comedic demolition. Insults so quick you couldn't build a defense. He once greeted Carson's audience with, "Look at you, 30 million people watching a hockey puck." In 1976, while guest hosting, Rickles accidentally broke Johnny's cherished wooden cigarette box. The next night, Carson discovered it live on air, stopped the show, and marched across the hall to confront him on the set of CPO Sharkey. Cameras caught it all. Carson holding the broken box like evidence, Rickles cowering in mock guilt. America roared. But off camera, there was a line. Rickles sometimes blew past time cues, overshadowed other guests, and once mocked an audience member's weight badly enough to draw complaints. After 1985, Carson quietly put guardrails in place, destruction limits, PG-rated family jokes, and a one appearance per sweeps period cap. Rickles mostly played along, but he still left Carson sweating. 8 disruptors, 8 flavors of tension. Frank Sinatra's power plays, Bob Hope's canned gags, Joan Rivers' betrayal, Wayne Newton's intimidation, Fred Rogers' earnest stillness, Charlton Heston's epic speeches, Chevy Chase's arrogance, and Don Rickles' cyclone of insults. They all chipped away at Carson's composure, but rarely did the audience see the cracks. Watch closely now and you'll spot them. A pencil gripped too tightly, a sip of coffee taken too fast, a laugh that lasts just a hair too long. That was Johnny Carson's hidden craft, turning irritation into entertainment, betrayal into ratings, and dread into sharper punchlines. Because in late night, the next torch you juggle might not be foam or plastic. It might be lit. Or worse, it might be a hockey puck holding a hammer.